The rain was pouring heavily across the city and strong winds rattled the windows of every building as 32-year-old Daniel Parker drove his old delivery van through the nearly empty streets. It was close to midnight and he had been working since 6 in the morning. His face looked tired and his eyes burned from exhaustion, but he could not stop because every extra delivery meant a little more money for his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. 3 years earlier, his wife had died after a long illness and since then he had raised Lily all by himself. He worked at a warehouse during the day and delivered food at night. Life had become difficult, but every time Lily smiled at him, he found the strength to keep going. That night he had only one delivery left before he could finally go home. After dropping off the order, he started driving back toward his apartment. Thunder suddenly roared above him and lightning flashed across the sky. As he turned onto an old street near the edge of the city, he heard something unusual. At first he thought it was only the wind. Then he heard it again. "Help!" The voice was soft and weak. Daniel slowed the van and looked around. There was nobody on the road. Rainwater flowed along the sidewalks and the houses looked dark and empty. A few seconds later he heard it again. "Please, help me." Daniel immediately parked the van. Most people would have ignored the sound because it was late and the storm was getting worse, but Daniel thought about Lily. If his daughter were ever alone and frightened somewhere, he would pray that someone stopped to help her. He stepped out into the rain and listened carefully. The voice seemed to come from an old abandoned house nearby. The building looked scary. Its windows were broken and weeds covered the front yard. The front door hung slightly open. Daniel slowly walked toward it. "Hello?" he called. There was no answer. Then he heard a small sob. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was cold and dark. Pieces of old furniture were scattered everywhere. He followed the sound into another room and suddenly froze. Sitting in the corner was a little girl. She looked around 7 years old. Her clothes were soaked with rain and she was shivering badly. In her arms she held a small teddy bear. Daniel immediately knelt beside her. "Hey, sweetheart. Are you okay?" The little girl slowly looked up. Her eyes were red from crying. "I'm cold," she whispered. Daniel quickly removed his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Emma." "Where are your parents?" Tears filled her eyes again. "My mommy didn't come home." Daniel's expression changed. "When did you see her last?" "This morning. She went to work and never came back." She looked down. "The landlord said we had to leave because we couldn't pay rent. I didn't know where to go." Daniel felt his heart break. The little girl looked exhausted and hungry. "Did you eat anything today?" Emma slowly shook her head. Without saying another word, Daniel carried her to his van and turned on the heater. He gave her the sandwich and juice that he had planned to eat himself. Emma ate slowly, as if she had not eaten all day. Daniel then called the police and explained everything. 20 minutes later 2 officers arrived. One of them listened carefully and suddenly looked surprised. He made a phone call and then returned. "A woman named Sarah Thompson was injured in a traffic accident this morning," he said. "She survived but is unconscious in the hospital. There were no emergency contacts listed." "Is that your mother's name?" Emma's eyes widened with shock. "Yes. That's my mommy." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "She's alive?" The officer smiled kindly. "Yes, sweetheart. She's alive." Emma burst into tears and hugged Daniel tightly. He gently patted her back. "Everything will be okay," he said softly. Since it was almost midnight and the weather was terrible, the police asked Daniel if he could take care of Emma for one night until proper arrangements were made. He agreed. Immediately. When they reached his apartment, Lily opened the door with sleepy eyes. "Daddy, you're home." Then she noticed Emma standing beside him. "Who is she?" Daniel smiled. "Her name is Emma and she needs our help tonight." Lily looked at Emma's sad face and immediately held her hand. "You can sleep in my room," she said. Emma looked surprised. "Really?" Lily nodded happily. Friends share everything. For the first time that night, Emma smiled. The next morning Daniel took both girls to the hospital. A nurse led them to a room where a pale woman lay sleeping. As soon as Emma saw her, she ran forward. "Mommy." The woman slowly opened her eyes. "Emma," she whispered. Mother and daughter hugged each other tightly and both began crying. The nurses standing nearby wiped tears from their own eyes. A few minutes later Sarah looked toward Daniel. "Did you save my daughter?" she asked softly. Daniel shook his head. "I only heard someone asking for help." Tears filled Sarah's eyes. "No. You did much more than that. You stopped when everyone else would have kept driving." Over the next several days Daniel visited the hospital with Lily and Emma. The girls quickly became best friends. They played games, laughed together and drew pictures while Sarah recovered. But another problem soon appeared. Sarah had lost her apartment and had nowhere to stay after leaving the hospital. Daniel remained silent for several moments. Then he smiled. "I have a spare room in my apartment. You and Emma can stay with us until you get back on your feet." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "You don't even know us. Why would you do that?" Daniel looked at Lily and Emma laughing together. "Because after my wife died, strangers helped me and my daughter survive. Their kindness gave us hope when we had nothing. I promised myself that one day I would help someone else the same way." Sarah's eyes filled with tears once again. A stormy night had begun with a tired delivery driver trying to finish one last order, but because he chose to listen to a quiet cry for help, a frightened little girl found safety, a worried mother found hope, and two lonely families discovered that kindness can create a new beginning and sometimes a single moment of compassion changes lives forever.